For years, the wide plains of the frontier had known only one man riding across their horizon. A quiet, rugged cowboy named Samuel Hart. Folks from the nearby town called him the Lone Rider, a man carved from dust, silence, and distance. After his wife died giving birth to their twin daughters, Lily and Rose, Samuel withdrew from the world like a man who had lost not just a partner, but a piece of his own soul. He did not talk much, did not smile much, and did not invite strangers anywhere near his land. His small cabin stood alone on the far edge of the prairie, surrounded by thousands of empty acres where only the wind dared speak his name. And yet even in the middle of all that emptiness, two little voices filled the cabin with laughter. Lily and Rose were 7 years old, bright, curious, and full of the kind of courage only children could have. They adored their father fiercely, even if they barely understood the battles he fought inside. While Samuel loved them more than his own life, he feared failing them. He feared loving again. He feared losing again, but the days continued. The sky rolled on and the prairie dawns whispered that change would come whether he wanted it to or not. One early morning, the girls decided to wander farther from the cabin than they usually did, chasing butterflies and following strange animal tracks as the sun spread gold. Across the tall grass, Samuel, repairing an old fence post, trusted they would not go far. But children rarely walk in straight lines, and by midday, they had wandered near the forested stream bordering Apache territory. There, kneeling beside the water, was a woman unlike anyone they had ever seen. She wore soft buckskin, decorated with colorful beadwork that shimmered in the sunlight. Her dark hair was braided neatly, tied with a feather that swayed in the breeze. She was young, but her eyes held a depth strong, calm, and filled with stories the girls could not yet imagine. Though startled at first, she smiled gently at the sight of them. "Are you lost?" she asked, her voice soothing like the calmest river. Lily shook her head. "No, we're exploring." "Who are you?" The woman introduced herself as Nayeli, an Apache healer who gathered herbs along the stream. The girls instantly liked her, perhaps because she treated them with respect, perhaps because she had an aura of warmth missing from their lonely world. She taught them the names of wildflowers, showed them how to follow the path of dragonflies, and sang a soft tune in her native tongue. But back at the cabin, Samuel felt the silence turn threatening. The girls were late, too late. Panic, his oldest enemy, wrapped around his chest like barbed wire. He dropped everything and saddled his horse, racing across the prairie. When he found them, they were walking hand in hand with Nayeli toward the grassland. The moment he saw the stranger, he pulled sharply on his reins, suspicion blazing across his face. He dismounted, stepping in front of his daughters, rifle in hand though not pointed. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice deep guarded, worn by years of loss. The girls quickly spoke up, defending the woman. "Papa, she helped us. She's nice." Nayeli raised her hands calmly. "Your daughters were near the stream. I meant them no harm. They are brave children." Samuel did not answer right away. He studied her, trying to read every shift in her eyes, every breath she took. He had lived long enough on the frontier to know danger when he saw it, but he also knew honesty. And there was honesty in her posture, in her steady gaze, in the way she shielded his daughters even as he glared at her. Without another word, he lowered his rifle but not his guard. "Thank you," he finally said, though the words felt heavy, unused. Nayeli nodded politely and began to turn away, but Lily and Rose grabbed her hands. "Come meet our house," they begged. Samuel stiffened. "Girls, let the woman go. She's done enough." But Nayeli surprised them all. She stepped forward and spoke with respectful firmness. "I will walk with you to make sure you reach home safely. Then I will leave." They walked back, toward the cabin through the glowing afternoon light. The prairie wind seemed to watch them with interest, as if sensing a shift in the story. When they reached the cabin, Samuel stopped at the porch, blocking the doorway with his tall frame. The girls stood between him and Nayeli, their small hands wrapped around her fingers like they had known her for years. For a moment no one spoke. The sky turned orange, shadows stretched long, and the world waited. Samuel's eyes softened, if only slightly. "You're welcome to water before you leave," he said, though his voice carried rough edges. Nayeli accepted with a graceful nod. And in that quiet moment, Samuel watching her, the girls clinging to her, the sun painting everything in gold, something invisible but powerful stirred in the air. Something Samuel had shut out for far too long. A whisper of connection, a spark of possibility, a story beginning. And that was the day the Lone Cowboy's life changed forever. From the day Nayeli stepped onto the cowboy's porch, something gentle began to unravel in Samuel's hardened life, like a tightly bound rope finally loosening after years of tension. Though he told himself she was just a stranger doing a good deed, the image of her steady eyes and calm presence stayed with him. The twins, of course, talked non-stop about her, how she knew the names of every plant, how she sang songs that felt like magic, how she braided their hair better than anyone. Samuel pretended not to listen, but the truth was he listened to every word. Days passed. Then a week. Samuel assumed he would not see her again. Life on the prairie had a way of making encounters brief and memories long. But the world had different plans. One afternoon, a violent storm approached faster than any he'd seen that season. Dark clouds devoured the sky, rolling like mountains collapsing into one another. The air thickened, the wind howled, and the horses grew restless in the corral. Samuel immediately called the girls inside and began securing the barn. Just then, he saw a figure in the distance running through the tall grass as the storm's edge whipped dust behind her. Nayeli. She looked injured, clutching her arm but determined. Samuel didn't hesitate. He ran to her, catching her just as the first drops of rain slammed into the earth like thrown stones. He brought her inside, shouting for the girls to fetch towels. When he examined her arm, he saw a deep cut, likely from sharp rock. She explained she had been gathering herbs when her horse spooked and she fell. Samuel cleaned the wound gently, his rough hands surprisingly careful. Nayeli watched him with quiet interest, sensing the mixture of solitude and tenderness living inside this man. The storm raged outside, thunder shaking the cabin, but inside it felt strangely peaceful. The girls hovered around Nayeli like little guardian angels. Lily asked if she was scared. Nayeli smiled through the pain. "Fear visits everyone," she said softly, "but it does not control me." Samuel looked at her, impressed despite himself. Hours passed. The storm refused to end, trapping Nayeli at the cabin. She insisted she could walk home after the rain, but Samuel shook his head. "You stay tonight. The plains flood fast. It's not safe." It was the first time in 7 years that another adult slept under Samuel's roof. The night was quiet except for the storm, and Samuel found himself awake longer than usual, staring at the small fire while the girls slept curled beside Nayeli. Something stirred inside him, an awareness he didn't want but couldn't ignore. The next morning, the storm was gone, leaving the prairie washed and shining. Samuel walked Nayeli outside to check the damage to her horse's tracks. She studied him for a moment before speaking. "You're a good father," she said simply. Samuel laughed dryly. "I try. Try? Doesn't mean I know what I'm doing." Nayeli stepped closer, her voice steady. "A man who protects, who listens, who sacrifices. He knows more than he thinks." Samuel's chest tightened. Compliments were rare, and from her, they felt heavier somehow. Over the next weeks, their paths kept crossing. Sometimes by accident, sometimes because the girls begged Samuel to let them visit her tribe's trading area. Other times because Nayeli brought food, herbs, or small gifts for the girls. Slowly, carefully, walls began to crumble. Samuel found himself talking more about his late wife, his fears, his hopes. Nayeli listened quietly, never judging, only understanding. She too shared stories of her people, her childhood, her dream of healing others. Trust grew, respect deepened. And the girls, thrilled to see their father, smile again, even if only a little, secretly plotted to bring them even closer. Their plan came sooner than expected. One evening, while Samuel tended to injured cattle, the girls ran to fetch Nayeli for help. Together, she and Samuel worked side by side, their hands brushing, their eyes meeting with unspoken meaning. When the work was done, Samuel finally admitted softly, "I don't feel alone when you're here." Nayeli looked at him with that same calm strength he admired so deeply. "And you don't have to be." That night, under the boundless stars of the frontier, something changed between them. Not sudden, not loud, but warm and certain. A promise, a beginning. When the girls saw them walking back toward the cabin together, hand in hand, they squealed with joy, their plan successful. And from that day forward, the Lone Cowboy was lone no more. His daughters hadn't just brought home a beautiful Apache woman. They had brought home the missing piece of his heart, the woman who healed wounds he didn't even know were still bleeding, the woman who turned silence into peace and loneliness into family. And that was how a broken cowboy found love again on the wide American frontier.